Check one. Check. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay. Hi, Vivian. Okay. Welcome to our semi-annual series, Let's Talk About Maryland. My name is Lisa Greenhouse, and I'm a librarian in the Maryland department here at Pratt. Tonight, I have the honor of introducing Director of the Maryland Park Service, Angela Crenshaw. Ranger Angie, as she likes to be called, received her bachelor's degree in economics and environmental studies from Washington College, and her master's degree in energy and environmental policy from the University of Delaware. After working at several Maryland state parks, including for a time as assistant manager of the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad State Park in Church Creek, Maryland, Ranger Angie became the first Black female park manager in the history of the Maryland Park Service at Susquehanna, Rocks, and Palmer State Parks. In April 2023, she was appointed the acting director of the Maryland Park Service and was offered the full directorship in November 2023, again, the first Black woman to hold that office. First woman to hold that office. In 2024, Ranger Angie received the Department of Natural Resources Leader of the Year Award and the Harriet Tubman Lifetime Achievement Award from the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. In early 2025, Ranger Angie was named the Maryland Woman of the Year by USA Today. The honor has allowed her to share the good news of the Maryland Park Service and the incredible life of Harriet Tubman with a wider audience. I'm privileged to be friends with Ranger Angie's mom, Von Seal, who is very proud of her, as well she should be. Von Seal, do you want to stand up or raise your hand? Okay. She shared something with me the other day that I thought I would share with you. And Angie has had a lifelong love of nature, starting as a little girl playing in the woods and creeks. There was one aspect of nature, however, that was a little tough for Angie to love: spiders. I too am an arachnophobe, so I can relate. Von Seal shared the story of Angie's first overnight camping trip at Camp Conowingo in Cecil County with 25 other first grade Brownie Scouts. Angie's father, Anthony, was a chaperone. Anthony, do you want to raise your hand? Okay. Okay. As the sun went down and the girls settled in for the night, the screams began as Angie and the other girls began fighting spiders in their wooden platform tents. Anthony and the other chaperones had to run from tent to tent removing spiders. But fortunately, Angie had a chance to outgrow her arachnophobia when at college environmental study abroad in the Ecuadorian jungle, Angie spent a whole week in a crude wooden shelter with a dinner plate-sized Amazonian spider. She didn't scream, and she named it Arnold. They coexisted without really bothering each other. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Director of the Maryland Park Service and recovered arachnophobe, Angela Crenshaw.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. My name is Angela Crenshaw, and I'm the proud director of the Maryland Park Service. Thank you, Lisa, for the invitation to speak here today, and I'm here to talk about Maryland. I do want to point out that all of my photos, except for the obvious ones, are in Maryland State Parks. Can anyone guess where that one is? Sandy Point. What was the hint? The bridge in the back. Yes, that is a lovely shot. It was taken on Jewish New Year. So let's get started. You guys ready for a tour? Wonderful. So before I start, I want to give you all an overview of our Maryland State Parks. We are way much more than just the land that we manage. This image is from Wills Mountain. It is in Cumberland, Maryland. It's a beautiful, clear day, and you can see all the way to Pennsylvania. A quick overview. I'm going to talk about our properties, our people, which to me are our most important asset. I'm going to talk about our mission and our projects. Does everyone know where that photo is? Assateague, yes, we got the ponies in the sunset. A little bit about our properties. We manage 90 properties, including state parks, state historical parks, natural resources management areas, natural environmental areas, battlefields, and rail trails. We have over 2,000 campsites, 129 full-service cabins, 130 picnic pavilions, and 1,177 miles of trails. And we manage the most historic properties in the state of Maryland with over 150, and that comes to 142,443 preserved acres, or about 7.75% of the entire state of Maryland. Thank you. Woo. That's my godmom. She's pretty biased over there. Here's a map of our Maryland state parks. I like to include it because you can see once you're out in Maryland and along I-70 and I-68, they're coming at you fast. There's a whole bunch out there. We have a lot in Central Maryland, Southern Maryland, and the Eastern Shore as well. I do want to point out Baltimore City and Wacomico counties are the only places without a Maryland state park, and we're working on remedying that. Just to highlight my lovely staff, there are 270 of us. And for seasonals, which is a 10-month contract, we have 349, sometimes up to 624. We have administrators, maintenance workers, rangers, and planners, and we're always hiring. So if you're interested in a job at a park service, it's job apps on the cloud right there. And that's clearly not the state of, that's not a Maryland State Park, that is at the White House. I'll explain that a little bit later. We also have a number of projects. We have a planning and review team. Anytime you move dirt in a Maryland State Park, you have to put in a form, and our review team checks that out. We also have a historical and a cultural resources team. They help us manage all of our historic resources. And we have a number of conservation corps. There are young people. We have Maryland Conservation Corps, Veteran Conservation Corps, the Conservation Jobs Corps, and I want us to start a Historic Trades Corps. As I mentioned, we have 150 historic sites, but we can't do a lot of work on those. So it'd be great if our historians could learn how to do that through historic trades. And I wouldn't be speaking about the Park Service if I didn't talk about our mission. It guides us in every single thing that we do. I would like you all to read this with me. So please join me in reading the mission. The mission of the Maryland Park Service is to manage the natural, cultural, historical, and recreational resources to provide for wise stewardship and enjoyment by people. There's some key words in there. Can someone shout out a key word? Historical. I love how everyone had historical first. Yes, we manage all of our historic resources. Natural. That's another very good one. Stewardship. Thank you. So we do the best that we can. through stewardship, and we try to share that stewardship with everyone that visits. Anything else? Cultural, love that. I'm going to highlight our cultural resources. Anything else? Natural, oh, enjoyment. Yes, that's the key one, and that's usually the last one that people say. But our parks are for people, and we want people to enjoy our parks. So it is my goal that we fulfill the mission. Now I'm going to move on to our parks, past, present, and future. And I love that image. That is sunset at Jane's Island. So I have 4 quick objectives that I will try to cover. I'll highlight my ranger journey, how I'm moving the Park Service forward. I'm going to talk about Freedman State Historical Park. That was a new addition. If you all have seen the article in the banner, Lisa asked me to highlight Freedman's, and I'm happy to do that. And then I'll answer some questions. So I like to talk about my ranger journey. I think people think rangers scare Yogi Bear away and take away picnic baskets and run around in the woods, but we do way, way more than that. Since I'm at a library, I like to talk about my education. As you heard, I went to Washington College and I double majored. While there, I went to Rhodes University in South Africa, which was clearly a life-changing experience for me. They have large spiders too. Quickly got over that fear, and then I attended University of Delaware for my master's degree. There were a few years in between, but I'm gonna jump right to my ranger journey. So I started at Elk Neck State Park up in Cecil County. That picture in the top left is my good boy at Turkey Point Lighthouse. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. I also was the lead at Gunpowder Falls State Park. That is our main headquarters there at Jerusalem Mill. And then I transferred over to Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad State Park, and I began working there before the park was opened as their lead. Right before we opened, I became the assistant manager, and then I started moving that park forward, which was pretty amazing and clearly life-changing. As you can see, Harriet has on a Maryland scarf. A lot of people don't know she was born in Maryland in Dorchester County and spent her formative years there. She also had a pretty rough childhood and a pretty rough life. So whenever I could do something sweet for Harriet, I did, like put on a Maryland scarf. Then during the pandemic, I moved back to Gunpowder Falls State Park so I could be closer to family and friends. I do not recommend moving during a pandemic, but it was completely worth it because we report to work very early at Gunpowder Falls, and you can see that beautiful sunrise over the Gunpowder River. And then I became the manager of Rock, Susquehanna, and Palmer. That middle photo on the bottom row is Susquehanna in the fall. Please visit. It is absolutely stunning. That is the mill race. And then when I was offered this position as the acting director and then the director of the Maryland Park Service, a friend of mine had that picture in the bottom right made. I like to point out it has the wings of a Baltimore checker spot behind it. I love the fact that I'm from Baltimore and I highlight that all the time. And it has Harriet Tubman and my good boy there leading me. It's very nice art, thank you. So I love sharing African American history and my connection to nature with anyone who will listen. So thank you all for listening to me tonight. I love guiding heights and sharing the strength and the foresight of those who came before me. And I was privileged to give Governor Wes Moore a tour of Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad State Park. He connected with her spiritual history. I had a full tour planned for him. And then he opened with a very familiar quote from the African American church. And I turned and looked at his head staff and I said, "Is he religious?" She said, "Very much so." So I changed the entire tour and we talked about Tubman's religion and her spiritualness and her mother and everything she learned from there. So that was a wonderful experience. Becoming a Maryland Park Ranger and working at Tubman has changed my life, and I hope to lead the Park Service and change it for the better. So this job has not been easy in the least. If you look up the history of the Park Service, you can find the reason I'm in this role is not a very happy reason, but I'm very pleased to lead the Park Service forward. Most mornings I start my morning with tea with Harriet Tubman, and the day after I accepted this job, this was the fortune on my tea, and it says, "Accept the challenge you are facing. It may become your greatest gift." And it truly has. I was speechless this morning having my tea with Harriet, and I carry this with me all the time. So I wanted to share that with you all as well. So how am I moving the Park Service forward? Oh, this is also a sunrise at Dundee Creek Marina at Gunpowder Falls. So the Great Maryland Outdoors Act was signed into law in 2022 when I was an assistant manager. It is a once-in-a-lifetime piece of legislation that gave the Park Service money to repair a bunch of our old maintenance items. It gave us 100 pins, which is 100 full service positions, which is very rare to receive. And it gave us 2 state historical parks. So in this presentation, I'll share a little bit of my vision of what I'm going to do with the Great Maryland Outdoors Act pins. So a lot of hiring. I've been doing hiring since I started this job. It's the main thing that I do. I want to hire boots on the ground. During 2020, when a pandemic hit, the entire United States, most places shut down, but Maryland State Park stayed open, and our visitation more than doubled. My staff worked when everyone else did not, including me. We were very busy. And after that, we realized we need more members on our team. So we're going to hire boots on the ground rangers, people to fix our trails, people to do all of our maintenance. And I'm going to build out our planning and review team and our historical and cultural resources team. When I started this job, we had one historian for the entire Maryland Park Service. Now we have 3, yay. And I'm looking to hire a few more. I want to create a separate conservation corps team. Our conservation corps are our green ladders. These young people are the future of the Maryland Park Service. Right now, our conservation corps is an other duty as assigned. So I would like to make it its own entire separate division, and I think it deserves that. I'm also creating a logistics and a support team. If you've been to our parks, you know some of them don't have the best internet. Wouldn't it be great if you could upload your beautiful pictures like the wildflowers at Susquehanna once you are at the park? And so we're trying to bring internet, better phone connectivity, and everything to our Maryland state parks and support our maintenance crew. So I'm building a logistics and a support team. And I'm also breaking up complexes. Now, what's a complex, you ask? So we have over 70 Maryland state parks, but what most people don't know is a lot of them are run by the same group. So you can see the big one on the eastern shore. All of that land from Kent County to Talbot County is run by our Tuckahoe, or my Tuckahomies, as I like to call them. They have a full-time job. They run the most land in the Maryland Park Service. And so speaking to them, I learned that you can start in the top at Sassafras, and you can drive your car down to the bottom to Black Walnut Point and just touch every single gate, and that's a full 8-hour shift. That's not dealing with any issues. That's not dealing with emergencies. That's not doing paperwork that's required of this job. That's not talking to anyone. That is just driving. If you look to the left of that, that is Gunpowder Falls. When I worked at Gunpowder Falls, I would do 4 10s, so 4 10-hour shifts. It would take me a few weeks to visit all of our properties. That is unmanageable, and it's also not safe. So I'm breaking up these complexes. The other one you see at the bottom is Southern Maryland Recreational Complex. That's a conglomerate of about 6 or 7 parks. And then the one on the left is Seneca Creek, which manages the new Freedman's Park, Patuxent River, and Monocacy. So I'm breaking all of those up. That way our rangers can be more available and our parks can be safer. Also moving us forward, I got permission for us to celebrate Pride. Oh, thank you. Last year was our first year ever proudly celebrating Pride. And so the sticker on the bottom right and the one in the top left were our first stickers. And then the one in the bottom right is our newest one. And there's some stickers in the back. I know some people don't think that's a big deal, but given the round of applause I just received, you all understand how much of a big deal it is to see something like the Maryland Park Service, a conservation-minded group who used to be all game wardens, celebrating Pride. So I proudly sent my team to any Pride that they wanted to go to. This is an image from Rocky Gap, which is out in Flintstone. Cumberland, Maryland also celebrated their first Pride, and we were there. We were at Pride Annapolis. We tried to go to Baltimore, but it was a little expensive. And we were at a few other locations as well. But it was a big deal, proudly celebrating Pride. I also do a lot of community engagement. Since I'm proudly from Baltimore and we're at Enoch Pratt Free Library, I had to show that I spoke twice to Ashley Sterner. Yes, she let me fangirl her for the first 15 minutes, and then we actually got to the interview. She was so sweet and kind. We took live questions on air, which is terrifying if you've never done that. You really never know what people are going to say, but it went really, really well. And I was also featured on Baltimore Magazine. Look at the photo on the right. I like to show that. I was very, very meticulous with this photo. I wanted to show that I'm leading the Park Service. It's a bridge over troubled waters. So I'm looking forward at the rising sun, got up at 4 a.m., started these photos in the dark and took some really nice shots. And that's the final one. So that's a really nice image. And all of these public engagements that I do with a lot of fun. It's a good time, but it's also a lot of work. And I really enjoy interacting with crowds and people who wouldn't necessarily come and check out our Maryland state parks. And my team was invited to the White House about 2 years ago to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Endangered Species Act. There is no bigger stage than the White House, than the national stage that they offered us. You can see me and my team, and then in the back you can see one of our eagles there. It's only the second and third eagles to ever visit the White House, even though there are eagles everywhere. There are eagles on the doorknobs to the bathrooms. There are eagles on the sconce behind me. There are eagles on the floor. So it was a pretty amazing experience. And I'm a millennial, so I had to include the selfie of me and my team in front of the Eisenhower building smiling. We all got up at about 3 a.m. to go through Secret Service clearance to be driven through DC to get to the White House with our eagles. Secret Service was so sweet. Everybody wanted to see the eagles. It was really cool. And so I want to highlight my colleague, Sarah Milbourne. She wrote a beautiful article called From the Yellow Farmhouse to the White House, a journey of conservation and connection about our experience at the White House. And I want to highlight the stars. So if you see the eagle who is in the Rose Garden, that is Michelle Obama, or as we call her, Mo. So we got to bring Michelle Obama back to the White House. Huge privilege, thank you. Yep, they travel in a little cart. And so we were wheeling carts through the West Wing, and the Secret Service was like, what you got there? And we said, Michelle Obama. And they were like, she's an eagle. Do you want to see her? And so they were able to meet Michelle Obama. It was pretty cool. And the gentleman down on the left is Buchanan, or as we call him, Buck. He was a lovely visitor as well. And I really recommend reading Sarah's article. It's absolutely gorgeous. And of course, we got to meet the president multiple times. What an honor. There's a quick YouTube video on the Department of Natural Resources website called Scales and Tails White House Visit. It was truly amazing to be a Maryland Park Ranger at the White House multiple times. And so after the first visit, we were floating. Then we got invited back multiple times. And after our third visit, I had to ask his staff, why did you guys invite us back? Why is the president so happy to see us? And they were like, you guys are nice to him. And I said, people aren't nice to the president? And they all turned and looked at me. And I was like, okay, people aren't nice to the president. We were so pleased to be there and to bring joy and eagles and Maryland Park Service smiles. So I love including that photo. We were welcomed with open arms. We were given White House cookies. We all left with pockets full of cookies. And it was one of the best experiences of my life, guiding my team to the White House. And then to give you a little background, the ladies with me are Sarah and Jess. They've been Rangers for 20 years and 25 years. They've been staples in the Maryland Park Service. They're the queens of the service. So it was wonderful to go with them. And I have to talk about my long-term vision for the Maryland Park Service. I would like my team to look like the people that we serve. Out in Western Maryland, we achieved that. In Southern Maryland, Central and Eastern, we absolutely do not. So it is my goal to make my Park Service more diverse and resilient so we can serve the Maryland of the future. And I included this picture because I can't do it alone. The gentleman on the right is Secretary Kurtz. He runs the Department of Natural Resources, and he planted trees with us on Earth Day. The young lady planting with us is my colleague's daughter. What I love about Miss Vivian is my colleague has an amazing work ethic, and he gave that work ethic to his daughter. She planted more trees than I did on Earth Day. So I had to stop flapping my gums and go plant trees with Vivian, and that's what that picture was. So I'm just showing that I get support from the department secretary as well as the State House. I like to highlight my partnerships. I work with groups such as Girl Trek, Outdoor Afro, and Black and Marine Sciences to welcome African Americans and people who are normally not welcome in Maryland state parks. And I like to show them everything natural, cultural, historical, and recreational that we have to offer. And I do this through special events. So every year, once a year, I welcome about 60 outdoor Afros to Assateague State Park. We spend about 4 days on the park. We have a great time. We're always blessed with amazing weather, and we get matching shirts through a grant from the Friends of Maryland State Parks, which I think is super cute because everyone's like, where do I get a shirt? And I'm like, well, you got to sign up for the event and be a member of Outdoor Afro. And I always just share the information that I have, and it's a wonderful time of togetherness. So we go kayaking on Sinnapuxent Bay, and we go camping. You can see that's our camping group there. Since Outdoor Afro is a large group, they are nationwide. The DMV group is the largest with 6,500 people, and this event sells out in an hour, if not less, and it's for money, so it costs money to attend. And it's a big raucous group, and I love them very much. So I separate everybody. We have our extroverts. In the middle, we have the quiet group, and then we have our introverts on the far left, and everyone loves that. They've actually started doing that in other aspects of Outdoor Afro. I want everyone to get along, but at their own, comfort level. And so we always explore Sinnapuxent Bay, and that's some Outdoor Afro seining and figuring out who lives in the marsh. And we also do scavenger hunts on the dunes. So that's the naturalist sharing a horseshoe crab shell with everybody and just exploring the dunes. And we also read stories by the campfire, but not just any stories. I read to them. You can see how thick that book is. It's called The Underground Railroad, and it's by William Still. He was a very active agent on the Underground Railroad, and he published a book that's about nearly 900 pages. He self-published it, and it's the accounts of everyone that came through his office. So I usually read accounts from Baltimore, PG County, and then there's a few on there from the Eastern Shore. I always get help. As you can see, that's my friend Jay Holliday providing his headlamp. We read them a lot around the fire, and we talk about them. The most recent one was my favorite Harriet Tubman story, and there's a great quote where she says, "These are perilous times, and no foolishness will be tolerated on the road." Yep, so I had to read that twice just based on what we're all living through right now. But it's always a very moving group, and we always talk history. And then, of course, we do sunrise yoga. And the woman that leads this is the wife of one of our maintenance dudes. And I don't want to say we helped raise the sun that day, but I really think we helped raise the sun that day. And it's a wonderful way to just begin your day and kind of do a reset. And I can't talk about Assateague without showing the ponies. Here they are at a safe distance, I like to point out. Make sure you keep a safe distance from the ponies. They want your food. They don't want anything to do with you. So here are our sweet ponies grazing in Sinnapuxent Bay. So the community that is built in these events is life-changing and absolutely immeasurable. I look forward to it every year, and I've started calling it our family reunion. If you want to go next year, it's usually the first October of every year. Like I said, I always get us matching shirts, and we have a fabulous time. Next, I want to tell you about Freedman's Historical Park. How many people here read that Baltimore Banner article? Fabulous, just a few. If you haven't, I highly recommend that you do. It's called Unearthing History. Maryland's newest state park celebrates Black triumph. Freedman State Park is near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. It was my goal to run this park with a friend of mine named Eric Ledbetter. But when I took this job, of course, I can't run Freedman's anymore, and we lost Eric in July. So that has been truly heartbreaking for the Maryland Park Service, but we are powering through, and we're dedicating all of our hard work at Freedman's to him. So Freedman State Historical Park tells the story of Enoch George Howard. He was born in 1814 in Montgomery County, and he was born enslaved. He was a very talented farmer. You can see that photo shows the land that he farmed, and the house in the background is actually the house of his son. He farmed the land for the Gaither family. Sam Gaither, as in Gaithersburg, that same family, huge land-owning family in Maryland. And he was actually able to save up enough to purchase his freedom, the freedom of his wife, and their 4 children. And then they had a 5th child that was born free. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never heard anything like that before. So this was a big deal for the Maryland Park Service. When we purchased this property, we didn't know that that happened. We purchased this land because it's along the Patuxent River, and it's a great place to farm and a great place to hunt. So we actually tripped and fell into this history, and I'm really, really pleased that we did. So Enoch George, when he purchased his wife's freedom, he also purchased the house of the enslaver, Samuel Gaither. And there's the remains of the Gaither house on the right there. That's the end of the gable. I know that's not very clear, but that's all that is left. He moved his family into that home, and he raised his children there. When he passed away, he was known as a highly regarded man, and he had over 600 acres of land. Now, that's a lot for a gentleman that was born into slavery. And then to have a 5th child that is born free, I think is absolutely stunning. You'll notice I have the logo of the Baltimore Afro-American in the top left. Their origin story is at this park. So in the back left there, you can see some corn. That area that is still corn. It was corn when they sold it. Was sold by the sister, Martha Murphy, and it was sold to the brother, Greenberry, which kept the farm in the family, which meant the state couldn't divide it up, which is the only reason we still have it. That $200 was used to purchase a struggling church bulletin that became the Baltimore Afro-American, which is one of the oldest African-American newspapers in the United States, and they are still published today. So check out their website. When you read the article, they also highlight Savannah Woods, and she's their executive director, and she still publishes the paper and does their charity wing. So there's a lot of history at this property. So as you can see on the right, Locust Villa is no longer standing. When I give tours, some people really love the fact that the enslaver house has fallen down. I don't love that as a park ranger, but I can see the irony and I can appreciate that. When we bought the property, it looked like the way it did in the bottom right. So you can see Locust Villa was still standing. We don't know when it imploded and fell in on itself, but it definitely did. And that photo at the top, you can see there's a very tall gentleman at the bottom right. We think the house was being used just for agricultural purposes there, just because the roof isn't as clear and as connected as it should be, but it was definitely still standing and used by the family. Next, I'll highlight the son Greenberry's house. Thank goodness that one is still standing. So Greenberry is the gentleman who kept the farm in the family, and he is also a big deal in himself. So if you can see the house, we know what Locust Villa looked like because he modeled his home after Locust Villa. When it was in its prime, it was whitewashed and it had a huge front porch. And you can see I have arrows pointing to the roof there. We had a paint analysis done, and the paint that was used to highlight the house was called Aegean blue. So now, why was a gentleman who was born into slavery, why did he paint his house white with Aegean blue? They have other connections to the ocean that I'll tell you more about later, but that's some of the research I've been working on. You can see that the old addition is on the right. The house kindly backdated itself when the addition fell, which is lovely. It was full of asbestos, so we've cleaned that up and removed that completely, but we're getting that house reappointed. It looks very different now than it did when I took this picture about 6 years ago. They're doing reappointing for the bricks. They're redoing the roof. The roof is still pretty amazing. That's the only reason this house is still standing. It's a testament to the architecture that they used back in the day. And I will flip to an old photo. So that's the back of Greenberry's house where you can see the addition and you can see the kitchen. Now I love that kitchen because that's where the aunt used to cook, and I'm that aunt that loves to cook. So that part of the house really speaks to me. These are photos from their descendants. The photo at the top is the house when it was still being used. You can see the addition and you can see the gas tank that was used for the kitchen. And you can see the front porch that's kind of cut off, but if you squint, it's there. The picture in the bottom right is one of my favorites. That is the family photo that's included in the Banner article as well. That shows Greenberry, or as they called him, Uncle Green, and his wife Rebecca, or they called her Aunt Rebecca, and their children. I want to point out how stoic they are. When I give this presentation to parks, everyone's like, they look so serious. That's just how they took photos then. Everyone knows we take photos now like this. So I think that's actually a very nice photo. We actually get to see what Uncle Green and Aunt Rebecca look like. And I want to point out the little girl that's hugging on Uncle Green. I think that is Hattie Brown. That's their daughter, and she's adopted. She was adopted fully into the family. She's buried in the family burial ground, and she's even included in his will. And it is very rare to find such an old and fulfilling example of adoption in an African-American family. And I'm sure they told her what to do, but she said, no, I'm gonna hug on my daddy in this photo. So it just shows how warm and kind the family is. And they're still warm and kind, very sweet people. So to me, the most moving portion of this park is the graveyard. On the left, and this is an old picture, we've since done some work on it, but I love this image because it shows Enoch George's burial headstone as well as his wife, Harriet's. And you can see the rolling hills in the back. This park is less than 60 minutes from our nation's capital, but when you're there, you have no idea. You really feel like you're nowhere, and it's really moving and it's really stunning. So the first time I went to visit, you can see there's some items at the base of the tombstones there. When I first went to visit, we noticed pieces of glass and some shelves there. And one of my colleagues was like, Angie, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know everything about African-American history. So I made some calls. Turns out sea glass was used and put on graves, and it captures your soul and it sends you back to Africa. So it's meant to honor those that came before us and send us home. So whenever I go, I bring sea glass and we sing songs with Enoch George and Harriet. And I always put my sea glass on Hattie's burial stone. But I think that is a really beautiful connection to the sea, once again, in Montgomery County. But it shows the connection to African American culture. I love bringing people to that park. We also had archaeology done there, and these are descendants of Enoch George and Harriet Howard, including Savannah Wood. She's in the foreground there. And the same group that found Harriet Tubman's father's home in South Dorchester County did this archaeology. And we were able to bring the family there, and they were able to do something most African Americans can't. They could walk their family's ancestral land, and they did archaeology with trained professionals, and they were able to build a connection that most of us do not have. And a nice aspect of this, these two sweet little kids got to do archaeology and experience their family's land firsthand, and also found out I went to high school with their mom. So we had a nice little Smaltimore reunion that day as I hung out with Kiana and her family and got to build their own personal connection to Enoch and Harriet Howard. We also hosted Hard to Get and Dear Paid For. If you read the banner article, Savannah has done a short film. Those are all images from this piece of land. Park rangers helped her get those images. And the woman you see in the foreground is Aunt Roberta. She let us call her Bobby. She's the last living person who has memories of Greenberry's house. Very, very moving day for all of us. She walked through the house and told us what they did in the house, what they cooked, where she slept, where everybody slept. So it's pretty amazing to be able to do that with the last living relative. You can't tell from the photo, but she's in her 70s. So she was able to walk the land, but we also brought in ATVs, so we didn't wear out Aunt Roberta. And I think you can tell I love this park very much. So I always take our young people, and they always build a wonderful connection to history, our shared history. And so there's our young people, our CJCers and our MCCers and some park staff after we walked through Greenberry's house and explored that property. So now I'm going to tell you about the future of the Maryland Park Service. This is a beautiful sunrise from the King and Queen seat at Rock State Park in Harford County. If you haven't been, I highly recommend it. So the future, I think we all know kids are the future. Whenever I see a kid, they say the same thing. I've never met a Black park ranger before. They want to talk to me, they want to spend time with me, and they want to take pictures, and I always spend as much time as they want. You can see the gentleman in the top left, that's Mason. He caught his first fish ever at a fishing derby that I hosted. As you can see, he's the future president, so I hope he remembers the Park Service when he's the president. He had a lovely day. Miss Chariot is in the middle. She spent 3 nights camping, kayaking, and biking at Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad State Park. She bossed me around, she bossed her dad around, she bossed the owners of the kayak around, and I gladly did whatever Miss Chariot told me to do. She was a sweetheart. Then the young lady in the bottom right, that's one of my favorites. When I worked at Tubman and when you became a junior ranger, I asked you questions about Harriet Tubman. And then once you answered them, I asked if you wanted to take a photo with Harriet. And I usually meant the bust that was in the lobby. This young lady walked around, walked through the exhibit space, and I followed her. And she stood there and I said, "Are you ready for your photo?" And she went like this. So I took her photo and shook her hand. There is nothing else I can teach her about Harriet Tubman. I think she's got it. And right now I'm highlighting the kids, but the parents really love talking history and nature with me as well. So I think all of us are the future of the Park Service, but I like to highlight these little sweethearts that still stay in my heart. As well as our young folks, our conservation corps, as I mentioned there, are green ladders. They learn the skills that they need to manage land. They do this in Maryland state parks. This is also at Freedman State Historical Park. Those kids had never seen corn that tall before. The young man in yellow is about 6'3". So that tells you how tall that corn is. I asked if they had ever walked in corn. They asked me if I was crazy. So I walked in the corn and said they should follow me. When they didn't follow me, I kept walking and I heard someone say, "I can't see her." And they're like, "We can't see her either." So they all walked into the corn with me and we listened to the wind blow, and it was very, very moving. And I feel like they really understood how special that place was. So whenever I do a program with any of our young people, I don't look at my phones, I don't bring my computer, they get my full attention because they are the future of the service. And of course, y'all are the future of the Maryland Park Service. Without people like you all caring about our Maryland state parks and the stories we tell and the places we manage, I wouldn't be able to do this job. So make sure everyone knows that you love and you care for our Maryland state parks. So in this presentation, I've shown you pictures of Assateague, Freedman State Historical Park, Rocks, Gunpowder Falls, Sandy Point, Janes Island, and Harriet Tubman. And before I go, I would like to invite you all to visit our Maryland state parks. Go for a day, go for a weekend, rent a cabin, rent a campsite, take your friends, take your family, or just go by yourself. I promise you'll have a lovely time. I always leave feeling much more full when I've been to our Maryland state parks, and I hope you leave feeling the same. And here's, of course, another sunrise at Assateague. So gratitude is an important part of my life, as Angie and Ranger Crenshaw. So before I leave, I would like to leave with some gratitude. Thank you all for being here in this space and this moment with me. Thank you for participating in this event at Enoch Pratt Library. Thank you, Lisa, for the lovely invitation to speak here. And thank you all for allowing me to be your director of the Maryland State Parks. I'm always at your service. Thank you. Thank you much. Thank you. Yes, appreciate the love. So now I'll take any questions that you all may have. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, go ahead. We're friends, you can shout. What's your question? Mm-hmm. It just depends what we're hiring for and what you want to do. So some of our jobs require more experience and more education. When I became a park ranger, I had never been a ranger before, ever. I just knew that parks seemed fun and interesting and more and better than being at my desk. So the minimum, most people have to drive. Our parks are large, as I mentioned, so you have to be able to drive. I tell people I can teach you anything. So I tell people you need to come with a good attitude. I can't teach you a good attitude. I can teach you how to do plumbing, how to fix a toilet. I'm not great at chainsawing, so other people can teach you that. But we can teach you anything that you need to know. We just need you to come with a good attitude. No, there are no age limits. Just as I said, being able to drive is helpful. Yeah. And I became a park ranger late. I was good and in my 30s when I became a park ranger. Most people know they want to be a park ranger and go to school for that and graduate and start applying once they're in school. I did not do that, but you can become a ranger at any age. Oh, I'm gonna go with Mr. John. He had his hand up.
Angie,
Yeah.
Fabulous talk.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, like Assateague is a national seashore
Mm-hmm.
and a state park. How do you interface with the national parks? How does that work?
It's different at every location. So Mr. John asked a great question. That's my goddad. That's how I know who that is. So Assateague has multiple sections. We have the northern piece. If you look on a map, we have Assateague State Park. That's the northern piece. And then we have the piece on land that includes like the Verrazano Bridge and the Visitor Center and the Ratcliffe House. The National Park Service does manage the southern portion, which goes down into Virginia. As I'm sure some of you are aware, they didn't have lifeguards this year. So we started receiving letters that our lifeguards should go to the national side. And I said, oh, are you going to pay these young people? Are you going to protect these young people? The ORV trail side is gorgeous and stunning, but they really don't have that much staff down there. So we work closely with that park manager down there. I've worked with him at Tubman because he is one of the nearest managers there. I know they're having a tough time, so we support them where they can. There's some weird rules out there. They can't spend more than $1 on their credit card, which basically inhibits you from buying anything. Everything's more than $1. So again, we support them as much as we can. Their visitor center that's on the mainland is actually on state property too, so we have a lot of agreements with them. We also have Harriet Tubman, and that's managed by the National Park Service and the Maryland Park Service. We have the C&O Canal, which runs along the Western Maryland Rail Trail. And then we have Catoctin, which is along Cunningham Falls. So we have relationships with all the managements of those locations. They're all very different, but we try to work together. When you're hiking and when you're a regular guest, you don't know the difference between the Maryland Park Service and the National Park Service. So our goal is to have that seamless connection with the land for everybody. When you're driving and you need help, you're going to wave down anybody. It doesn't matter what uniform they're wearing. So we try to always make sure we work closely with our partners. Very good question. Yes.
There was
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so first off, they were asking about jobs. Also, there's question here.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to double check. Is that the link that you had said, jobappscloud.com?
That's the link.
Perfect.
Yep, you need to make an application online. I tell people start your application early. You want to be able to hit submit without worrying about the deadline. It is a very long application. They ask everything about you, where you live, your education, why you want to do this job, where you want to work. So please go on job apps and start your application. I do acknowledge that the state is in a hiring freeze. We have gotten some hiring freeze exemptions put through. So the Maryland Park Service is still hiring. We're also permitted to hire as many seasonals or 10-month contracts as we can, and you have to do that on job apps too. Please put that in the chat. Thank you. Any other questions online?
The only other thing was Parks and Pride. But I think it was just a miscommunication. Pride the cover thing. Table that Pride, is that?
Correct. So I just highlighted the fact that we celebrated Pride this year and last year with the full support of the department. We kind of celebrated the year before, but we kept that kind of quiet. But now that we got permission to do it, we put Pride on the full logo of the Maryland Park Service. So everybody knows that we fully support Pride. So that is how I plan to move the Park Service forward. I hope that answers your question by building an inclusive and diverse and caring service. And Lisa, you had your, oh, thank you.
I was just curious if you're getting a lot of inquiries from National Park Service.
Yes, her question was, are we getting a lot of inquiries from National Park Service employees? Usually the Maryland Park Service loses staff to the National Park Service, and now we're getting staff that want to come back. I did interviews for jobs, I think it was about 2 months ago, and I interviewed most of USAID. Yeah, exactly. I thought it'd be lovely, but it was actually really sad to hear how all these people got doged or cut from their positions, and now they're looking to move to something more stable. So we do hear from the National Park staff a lot, as well as other federal agencies for groups that want to do conservation. Yeah. Yes, in the back.
I have a couple of questions. First one, would you be able to just go to the slide with that, please?
Yeah, I'll try to go back. It's pretty far back. I will get there. The question was jobs and hiring. So I'm going to try to find the job apps link. I think I'm getting close. There it is. Yep, you can also go to dnr.maryland.gov and click on jobs, but that is the actual link.
So, for the youth conservation,
That's a very good question. His question is it the same for Youth Conservation Corps? You actually have to go to dnr.maryland.gov for that one. That is separate from the service. Mm-hmm.
so how do I get into that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then do you have like resources to apply or something? All this
So all of our parks are on dnr.maryland.gov. You can see that map there, and you can also find the amenities. His other question was, how do I join that group that goes camping? I work with Outdoor Afro. So if you go to their website, they have an app now, and then you can follow them. Whenever they work with me, they say we're working with the Maryland Park Service or Ranger Angie. I used to do about 5 events a year. Now that I have this job, I do 2. So I always do Assateague, and you saw a few of those pictures. One of the pictures was from Juneteenth, where we went to the farm where John Brown planned his failed raid. I don't remember where that photo was. Keep going. I think I do keep going. So that is, there it is. Sorry. It's owned by private property. The state of Maryland was going to buy it, but the owner decided to keep it in the family. But I still work with him closely to bring people to his farm. It's about 7 miles from Harper's Ferry, and it's a very moving place. Thank you for asking that question. It actually allows me to speak about this property too. They also have one of the only places from the Chitlin Circuit in the back. So they have this amazing piece of history, and they talk about John Brown and how he rented it under a pseudonym. And in the back, you can see where James Brown performed on the Chitlin Circuit. He actually complained about the bathroom. So that's how he knows Maryland. I love that. He hated the bathroom. I think Tina Turner also performed there. It was a member of it was part of a Black biker group, which is really, really cool. Yes, ma'am. Yes, that's Assateague. So we have both of those. It's half National Park, half Maryland State Park. And I'll go back to the ponies. Oh, they have no idea. The ponies do whatever the ponies want. There are multiple bands, though, and some bands stay on the National Park side and some bands stay on the Maryland side. I tell a really funny story about Chip. He's the meanest horse that Assateague ever had. I met Chip through Outdoor Afro. I heard a bunch of stomping and clomping, and I heard horses screaming, so I started running. So the Outdoor Afros started running, and then Chip comes around the corner. So Chip was so mean that they had to sedate him and send him to Texas. There is a lovely article about Chip, and 50% of the horse-related injuries on the island were from Chip. Which I think I thought it was funny at the time. I wasn't a director at the time, but if you look Chip up, he is I think it's on the Washington Post. There are multiple articles about him. He's a pretty guy, but he's got a rough attitude. So now he's in Texas with other ponies in pony rehab and no longer causing issues on the island. His official name is Delegates Pride. So if you look up Delegates Pride or Chip, you can learn about my buddy Chip. Yes, ma'am.
Horses really got to him. The fearless leader he once was.
Oh my goodness.
I wanted to ask
Hmm.
why did you decide?
So she asked about my education and why I'm a park ranger. So I had a double degree at Washington College in environmental studies and economics, and I minored in climate change. Back 20 years ago when I graduated, there were only 6 of us. So it was a new major. Now, if you ask Washington College, it's one of their most popular majors. Then I went to the University of Delaware for my master's, and I got that in energy and environmental policy. I started working in air quality, and then I worked for the department removing abandoned boats and debris. And I thought that was fun, and I thought it was lovely, but I was sick of sitting at a desk. And through that job, I met a lot of park rangers. And so I saw them advertising for park rangers. So I was like, okay, I'll apply. So I applied and actually got in. So that was my change. I just wanted to get away from a desk and be out and about a little bit more. And that. The first Black woman park manager ever in the Maryland Park Service. Yes. I think we have a good mix in the Maryland Park Service. It might be slightly more ladies than men, but only a handful of African Americans usually in the service. We come and go. I've stayed a little longer than most, and so a few of my friends have as well. It isn't the easiest job, I can tell you that much, but if you love it, you stick with it. Yeah, you're welcome. The Baltimore what? I don't know anything about the Baltimore ecosystem study. I don't work on that. I know we're working with them with the Gwynns Falls Stakeholder Advisory Committee. Yep, I think they do a lot of stuff with forestry as well, but I'm not as involved with that. We let the forest technicians do that. Well, if that is it, thank you. Ooh, one more.
I felt it very personally. Sure, I forgot what child's name was adopted myself.
Hattie Brown.
Yes, Miss Hattie Brown.
Yeah, let me find Miss Hattie.
And I like how you shared her hugging. Definitely unapologetic for the problem. Mama said, my mom passed on.
I'm sorry.
So that was moving. That long ago.
Yes.
Like you said,
And legalized and written. And so Greenberry, as I mentioned, he was born into slavery, but then got his freedom. So if you think about how difficult that decision probably was. He had to go to a courthouse and prove that him and Aunt Rebecca could support Hattie Brown. They built a wonderful community at Howard Chapel, but they would have had to leave their wonderful, loving community and step outside of that to do all the legal stuff for Hattie Brown. So that was a tough decision. Like, yes, yes. You're very welcome. I've done this tour, and a gentleman said the same thing, and he hugged me, and he went and looked at Miss Hattie Brown's grave and put her hand. It's a very sweet moment.
I've been to Harriet Tubman
Mhm.
in Dorchester,
Yes.
and I could not explain it, and I think because adoption and finding my roots next to Miss Eva in
Mhm.
front of the library,
Mhm.
I felt magnetically connected there, and I couldn't explain it because my grandmother, paternal,
Mhm.
biological, was born in Somerset, which was
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
It's very spiritual.
And you know, Harriet Tubman adopted a girl named Gertie. She adopted Gertie later in her life. So if you look up Gertie, there's a picture of her. It shows Harriet Tubman, and it's usually with, I think they call her old auntie. It's later in life. It's Tubman and her second husband and adopted a little girl named Gertie. You're welcome. I love sharing that kind of history. Yeah. Well, thank you all for your time. Oh, a few more. Yes, Mom. That's my mom. You can't not call her Mom. Mm-hmm.
story of Enoch is so powerful because he was a prolific community leader. Can you talk about this that he supported, founded, supported, and were ongoing?
Yeah, I can talk a lot about Enoch George. How long do you have? I think the library has some time before they close. But as I mentioned, when he passed, he had a few hundred acres of land. He also gave land for a school and a chapel. What I love about the chapel is it was so small and so popular that only you went every other weekend. So you knew when it was your weekend, and you either went and you heard the pastor, or you stayed home and you listened to songs and you listened to other Bible verses. They had I think it's his great-great-granddaughter was Sister Constance. She wanted to be a nun, but of course she couldn't be a brown nun in the United States, so she left and went to Canada. She lived to be 103 years old, and her book is called Other Little Ships, and she has direct accounts of going to Greenberry's house and drinking the freshest water from the well and eating blueberries and running around. Like, you can tell that property was always amazing. And so there's this burial ground, there's another burial ground that's with the church, and then there's one that's in private property as well, and still part of the family. So Enoch George also provided grants for people. He gave them money so that they could purchase homes and land, and I also found that very moving. So he was a big member of the community. So when I studied African American history on the shore, I found this was very common as well. There was always one main person who was their main contact. You had to be literate, of course. And there was always a church and a school in the community. And so it was really interesting to find the same thing in Montgomery County. And so they called the whole neighborhood Howard Chapel, not just the church. The entire neighborhood was Howard Chapel. It's a lot of beautiful rolling hills. It's still farmland. There's a really beautiful horse farm nearby. And if you read the Baltimore Banner article, you can see the cemetery. And we actually found where the church was. And the church bell is actually in someone's basement. They won't quite tell me whose basement it is yet. I'm going to give them some time. And then the cornerstone for Locust Villa was actually stolen. So that's in someone's basement as well. If you can imagine how massive that cornerstone was, you didn't just walk up and yank that out. So you knew what you were doing. You had to support the rest of the house to yank out the cornerstone. And we know that it used to be there because it said BG, which is Bell Gaither, Bealle, or Beal or Bell, depending on where you're from. And it said 1790 on it. So those cornerstones were a big deal. And that, to me, that's a piece of history. So I'd like to find that as well and interpret it along with the house. So great question about Enoch George. Like, he paved the way for all of us. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Do you engage with children in school?
Yes, ma'am. That's what that Junior Ranger picture was from. So when I first got to Harriet Tubman, we welcomed all the fourth graders from Dorchester and Talbot County to the park. And the first time they came, the teachers had a piece of paper and it had some questions on there, and some of them you couldn't even answer in the visitor center. So I talked to my boss at the time and I said, can we put together a little Junior Ranger booklet? So I put something together and I was very proud of it, and I made a little patch, and then I got a quote. And the quote was pretty expensive to print it. And she's like, can we print this in black and white? And I said, you want me to teach American slavery in black and white? And she said, we'll do it in color. And I said, we'll do it in color. So yes, we have Junior Ranger books, 2 of them for Harriet Tubman. And we do work with a lot of schools bringing children to our state parks. The biggest issue is transportation though. So we usually have to work with a bus system or some way to get them to and from the park. But yeah, we work with a lot of kids, and I love sharing the story of Tubman with kids. They get it. That's a tough one too, because we don't have any state parks in Baltimore City and transportation is tough. But we have been working with other groups to make sure kids get out in nature. Yep, and I know they go to Carrie Murray, that is in Gwynns Falls as well. Any other questions? You guys are an engaging group. Yes, Miss Linda. You're welcome. Oh, that's my godmom. She's biased. Well, thank you all for coming. We have pride stickers in the back, and I'll stick around for a little while and answer questions. Thank you. Say what? Oh, probably. I can change it into a PDF and share it with the library. It's really large, so we'll PDF it and see if we can post it. Yeah. You're welcome. I'll be around if you guys want to chat.